You are listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, marketer and publicist in the cannabis industry. Today, our guest is David Nava, CRO at Rukli, a well-known California cannabis warehouse and distribution company. David started in the alcohol industry, learning the ins and outs of sales and distribution with large distributors like Southern Wine and Spirits. He went on to lead sales for 4 years at PetalFast and is now taking the reins at Rukli. We talked about the challenges and solutions of the distribution supply chain, why you shouldn't self-distro, how to get into retail and stay there, CPG trends, and what's happening in the New York and California markets. David is well known on the West Coast and brings a lot of insights to the show. Let's meet David.
Yeah, so like I was talking to you the other day, I would love your overview of Benzinga. Any kind of thoughts about the show?
I think in general, although I've had maybe a different mission in previous trips, for this one, as we're really focused on California, I genuinely want to get a feel for where everyone's head is at, what's the overall energy of the space, and see if the money's flowing. In previous years, I felt like there was a little bit of people felt a little beat up, and I think those are good data points.
I did go to the Revelry event, trade show here in New York City over the weekend, and that was what I noticed with that group. Like from even 5 months ago at the last show or whenever it was, there was just such a desperate, like beaten down look on everybody's faces. But, this time everybody was so positive. It was like sales are coming. It's almost like they can't even keep things on the shelf. That's basically almost every vendor that I spoke to, every brand kind of said that story. So
yeah, it's good to see that kind of energy shifting. I think some of it is kind of propped up by optimism of what could come with regulation changing, although no one really knows. Everyone has their crystal ball out, and a lot of people seem to have their fingers crossed, and that's good. It's good to stay positive. We'll see what the reality is. I also think that a lot of models have shaken out, and those who remain, it seems like there's an openness to work together, to collaborate, to move this thing forward. So
yeah, well, I mean, in New York, I think what is really happening here is that all of a sudden they finally opened up the dispensaries. Everybody was sitting on product because because we had some litigation issues going on, and there was so few, just like 50 or something. So now there's like close to 220 or a little over 200. So it's now flowing. The supply chain is opening up, and now they're moving their product and actually making some money. So that's what I think. They're just like, oh my God, our life savings we were about to crash and burn, and all of a sudden this whole new crop of dispensaries just opened. So I think they're just overjoyed that they're making money. So anyway, that was funny because that was the observation anyway in New York, but across the board, maybe, people are just really hopeful about the Schedule 3 probably. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, and the few that have hung in there. So anyway, okay, great. So thank you. Yeah. So I thought let's just start out with you could just give us an overview of Rukli's what Rukli is. Am I saying that right? Rukli?
It's Rukli.
Rukli. Okay.
Rukli. RUKLI.
Yes, if you could just talk about that. Is it a new company? And their distribution services, just a basic overview of the services.
Yeah, definitely. Rukli actually was granted the 3rd distribution license in California. They really started putting it to use in its kind of current form at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 as the opportunity to help brands not only with the transport, but with the actual warehousing, the fulfillment, delivery and collections. I think that opportunity grew in that time. Um, it's distribution is largely considered the blocking and tackling in most industries. A lot of times it's considered an afterthought in other industries. It's the one part of the supply chain that you shouldn't have to think too much about. That being said, you shouldn't take it for granted. You're going to want a quality partner, and it does everything from, pick up your product, warehouse it, do the fulfillment, do the delivery to the retail. Most importantly, collect the money and be a good partner with that. If the money doesn't get collected, the brand doesn't get paid, we don't get paid, nobody gets paid. And then, ideally, you provide transparency through that process. And we have a great system partnered with Cyclotech, built out a platform called Chasky, provides you transparency from everything from the order being picked and pulled, put on a truck, delivered, money picked up, you get photos provided by the drivers, integrated with OnFleet. And then, yeah, of course, the collections is huge. And that's something that we've really made a focus and a key value prop of our organization.
Yeah, also, that allows the retailers to have a better relationship, or not such a friction relationship with their brands, like having to track them down to get money. Like if they have a third party just dealing with that whole process, it doesn't add some weird tension, obviously, because so many people are having problems with payments and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want, your salespeople and your key relationship managers also being the ones asking for money. It could make those meetings hard to schedule in the future.
Yeah, New York, the Cannabis Control Board here has some sort of a website. I forgot what they called it, but they publish whoever the dispensaries that are
The bad boy list.
the bad boy list. Is that a common thing that's a public? I saw one dispensary on there actually, and now they're closed down. There was like one or two dispensaries on there, and they say that they're coming back, they're just relocating. But I think after I saw that they were having problems with payment, they're probably not coming back, but who knows?
Well, that kind of policy, that kind of list feels kind of inspired by Alcobev. And it's a good practice of letting the retailers know who shouldn't be done business with. It's a bad actor list. And, I'm not saying that you need that identical system in every state, but I definitely think that we should be, fostering relationships with people who pay for the product. They're selling it. Might as well remit the money.
Right. I know. I mean, everybody's trying to juggle their finances and pay, this. So, but yeah, I think I kind of think it's a good list too. Because you have to set the priorities and all that kind of stuff. So, so do you also have a sales a sales team that would work if someone wanted to have you do that? Or are
We
you?
actually don't have sales as part of our offerings.
Okay.
Our system integrates well with every CRM, HubSpot, you name it. There's a lot of organizations, whether individual brands or sales agencies, that have brands on our platform. And depending on how you want to go to market with your own team or with an agency, you'll find all the tools, all the data sources available.
Okay, I know some distribution systems do have a sales team.
Yeah,
right.
No, for sure.
Yeah. And then also you came from PetalFast, right?
I did.
Right. Okay. So that's what I'm also thinking. I mean, just in all industries, I know they do that, but they have a sales system, right? Is that?
They do.
Okay. So
They
that's,
do. Yeah.
okay. So you're going for a different model. Okay.
I think the ideal was to kind of move to a different pressure point in the supply chain. As sales is essential to build brands, you have a lot of different models that can service that. You can do it internally. You can go through an agency. You have brands doing hybrid approaches. You have brands with a small army of eat what you kill salespeople who can be representing God knows what brands. So there's a lot of different ways brands are are getting themselves, onto the shelf. But I
Yeah.
think one thing that in a healthy market is essential is the distribution piece, and the idea that brands are, constantly making the choice to self-distribute. I'd like there to at least be awareness that you don't have to. And secondly, it's probably costing you more than you think it is.
What are some of the things that could go wrong? Say, for instance, if somebody's doing it in-house that you see people internally. I think an internal sales team actually makes more sense than a third-party sales team.
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with third-party sales teams, and I feel like nobody sells your product like you do. Like if you're working for the brand, like they're representing multiple brands,
Yeah.
and I don't know. That's my experience, not in this industry, but in others working with third sales teams. It didn't really work for me.
Uh, okay, so I come from, Outbev, and I've worked at Southern Wine and Spirits as well as their suppliers. In every scenario, whether it was while I was at Southern, the individual brands still had their, relationship managers, their sales arm, at their supplier Anchor Distilling Company. Our individual brands that we would import still had maybe a national relationship manager. So you're always going to have an internal, kind of sales
Okay.
function. And
Okay.
you're going to
That makes
overlay that agency. You're going to use that muscle to create programs, to work with brand management, to allocate budgets to different things. But you're always going to have something internal, right?
right. That makes more sense. Right. So what are some of the talking about the California supply chain? I think, you're setting the stage or making the mistakes that we all don't want to do. So like, what are some of the challenges in the California supply chain that other states can learn from?
Well, I think one of the challenges in general is that every state kind of has the autonomy to set up their regs and their licenses um, themselves. And so in some states, they don't even have a distribution license. They have a transport license. They have a delivery license, which is actually meant to be from the brand to the consumer. So you have all these kind of duct tape solutions. But at the end of the day, I think brands are always going to want to know, especially if you're coming from another state, you have a licensing deal. I want to know that I can find manufacturing, somebody who can execute on my spec at the right price and the right tolerances. I think you're also going to want to know that your products, once manufactured, could live in a warehouse, and as orders come in, they can get safely to the retailer. And then again, they're going to want to know that that money can get collected.
Right.
So I
That's
think
the key.
having that license and that layer in every state makes a ton of sense. And I think when the states either, you know, kind of right size that, or if we just constantly have to find workarounds or a manufacturing license that is allowed to warehouse, whatever it is, that layer is always going to be desired by a brand, especially a brand coming from another state.
Right. So are you as Rukli planning on expanding into other states? Because I mean, we're kind of inching closer with all, as far as needing, maybe not cross-border sales, but multi-state operators. People are, brands are really now really
Uh-huh.
expanding into multiple states. It's becoming more cohesive now, and they're really starting to spread out. So
Yeah.
what do you, because if I was a brand, I would want to, kind of work with one distributor. I know we're all in a bind with this, single state
Yeah. Yeah.
operations, but I'm just curious what you guys are thinking about.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. And I would love to circle back because you asked the question about what are some of the
Oh,
pitfalls for the individual brands that are looking at self-distroing. But as far as our plans to expand, there's nothing on the table right now. I do think that, our expertise and what we do well, the warehousing, the um, chassis system that integrates with OnFleet, that integrates with the billing program, that integrates with the different CRMs, all of that backend does export really nicely.
mm,
And especially the collections that holds it all together. So I do think that would export, but as far as right now, it's all eyes on California and really drilling down on being the best
mm.
we can be out here.
Yeah, well, that's a
It's a
big,
big state. It's a big
big
undertaking.
state. Right. I know you guys have a lot to figure out there too. So I know a lot is happening. So I'm sorry. Yeah, if we go back to the other question. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think number one, as a retailer, even with consolidation of brands into different distributorships and whatnot, you have a ton of relationships. That's not only salespeople coming to you trying to peddle their products, but you also have a bunch of different fleets, trucks, distributors who are going to have to schedule their delivery time. So even if you're a smaller retailer, you might be carrying 150, 200 brands. At
Mm.
best, a third to half of those might be in the big or three or four distributors, but that still leaves 75, 100 different, distribution organizations with all different levels of organization, coordination, and communication, trying to tell you when they're coming to drop. So you're putting your receiving team, your accounting team, your buying team under just a lot of stress to manage all those relationships. I think in a more normal marketplace, whether you're talking CPG, whether you're talking alcohol, there's usually two or three distributors that are driving, the vast majority of your products. And then you're looking to your specialty providers for those kind of higher end products or something really unique. Um, you know, so
Right.
I think that's a little more organized, and you'll see a little more concentration coming through a few distributors who know how to interact with the retailer, who know how to let them know they're coming, where to park, how to communicate about picking up money, all of these things. It's just a lot of different touch points for people who are just starting to learn. It's a young industry. These
Yeah.
buyers aren't coming from corporate buying and that kind of training necessarily. It's starting to evolve. And so, as we move into those modern times, you're going to see more sophistication, more systems on their side. But I think we got to make their lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, and they might just, I've never thought about that perspective, but they might even demand that at a certain point because they need to streamline their systems, like you're saying, in their operations. If they're, they have one truck come in with, 100 different brands, that's an easy process
Yeah.
to to get it through into inventory. So, wow.
And not to mention, that's one part. The other part is, as I talk to people who are doing self-distro and I ask them, what would your estimation be, or what do your books tell you you're paying for this whole division that may or may not be a core competency for you at all? You may have no expertise, you may have some, you may have kind of duct taped and super glued it together. However you put it together, what's your estimation of what it costs you? And I'll hear numbers from 3% to 6%, 7%. And then we go through the list. You counting for parking tickets? You counting for,
Yes.
printing or office supplies? You counting your security? Are you holding that on that P&L, or is it on some other P&L? Because if you really looked at your true costs and stacked it up, I would definitely think that our rates are better than that price. But not to mention the mind share that it's taking up, taking away from your new product development, your product road mapping, your marketing. You're focusing on your sales apparatus. So
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, just processing sales through the system and yeah, get to the warehouse and the specs that are expected at the different retail outlets. And especially if you're going through if you're selling into an MSO, usually those bigger stores are more, more of them require these processes and labeling things that you have to abide by to get into their inventory. So that just takes a lot of stuff
100%.
like special labeling and all that kind of stuff, packaging and shipping situations. So that's really interesting. So I thought that maybe I had misunderstood. I thought that Rukli had done more sales. So I wanted to ask you, but maybe this will be from all your previous experience.
Yeah, sure.
You can talk about like, I just wanted to see, did you have any tips, for brands getting their products into retail in a crowded and mature marketplace like California? You're kind of smack in one of the, most mature markets.
I,
Are
I
you-
definitely have a perspective on it.
Okay, okay,
I didn't delete my hard drive
okay.
after being in sales most of my life. Yeah, I think that it always starts with the product, right? Do you have product market fit? Does your branding resonate? Do you have an identified core audience? If you're checking all those boxes, the next big one is it's a relationship game. And I think that good products and good relationships will always drive. It doesn't matter how sophisticated this marketplace gets. Those are going to be key. And I think having your relationship managers have a relationship with the buyers and the bud tenders, that's always going to be, a major box you're going to want to check. Outside of that, your product market fit, your price point, your form factors, all of those things have to be, what the customer wants. If you're not turning over on the shelf,
Yeah.
we got a problem. They're going to come back to you. They're going to ask you to take it back, to discount it, to give free product for promotions. So if the goal is to do business for a long time, to earn that door and then stay on that shelf for a long time, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing your part to sell that product through. And no, I don't believe that a bunch of promotions and BOGOs and all that, I don't think that spells longevity. Your costs and your margins and very rarely can get cut all the way in half and you still run a good business. So
Yeah.
your product's gonna have to sell on your non-BOGO days.
Oh, I know. God, it's so true. Yeah, you can't be cutting 50% all year long, that's for sure, and survive.
Yeah.
What do you think, like, or do they have it in California, like these pay to play schemes to get on the shelves and things like that? And is that something, like you have to pay for space anywhere or, advertising? Like a lot of the dispensaries have those, menus, like the changing menus and advertising brands. And do you think that kind of stuff really works? Or
I think that they will always be there. And I've been to, I think, 10 legal states at this point, and some form of it always exists. And yeah, I think more of the different, variations of it I've seen in California. I think at the end of the day, you want to make sure you have a good partnership with that retailer.
yeah,
If they have some space that you can, make your brand more prominent, but you have a good relationship, they're ordering regularly, they're paying regularly, they're not crushing you on your margin, they're allowing you to win and make them money with your products, then yeah, those opportunities can be great. If
yeah,
that's your whole approach to penetrating the market, I hope your budget's huge. I hope it's big. It can work. It can
right.
work. It can get you market saturated, but
It
at the
takes
end of the
budget.
day, you better have an ROI calculator. You better be vetting these opportunities, and I mean, ideally, you're not using it to build a relationship. You're using it to bolster a relationship.
Right, right, right. Right. And get attention. What are some like things like you keep mentioning, your relationship with the retailer. Are there some things like, maybe tips on dealing with a retailer? Obviously don't be annoying and come in every second and, and then they don't tell you why they're not choosing your product. It could be such helpful information if they said, hey, we have too many infused pre-rolls. Hey, if you just did this, we're really looking for some chocolates or, uh, things like that.
Yeah, I think that the playbook is really deep. And as I talk to different salespeople, that whether I've worked with them or whether I've managed them or whether I'm just, in the industry with them and picking their brain as well as my experience, every situation is a little bit different. I do think that um, a lot of people take the approach of working with the lead bud tenders and kind of getting the tastemakers a little bit of buy-in and making sure you have a good relationship with the staff, that you're not kind of drawing them off their business and what they're supposed to be focused on, that you are a customer of their store sometimes helps. Um, I think be likable, add value, be a resource, sometimes be generous with your samples. If those bud
Mhm.
tenders like the product and they start telling the buyer that they like the product and the people that are representing the product, it could help. But there's a lot of different ways. I've seen people try some interesting things, you know.
I mean, bribery kind of things,
Man, there's
sending them on trips.
uh, Yeah, sure. Ball
Here's a bag
games
of
and
here's a
trips and
bag of
big
weed.
dinners. All of those things have been in the playbook for decades and decades. And some of it works. I think again, you don't want to set yourself up to where you're just, you know, paying for your relationship. You want your brand and the relationship between your brand and the retailer to really have a partnership.
I would think that in California that most consumers are familiar with brands, like here in a new state like New York, people aren't, I think, I think people are now starting to walk into dispensaries and say, hey, I want, Camino, or I want, Kiva or whatever. Like they know their brands now. All right, so in California, do you think brands really have to depend on bartenders as much as they do in a new state like New York? Is that
Oh,
still?
definitely. Definitely.
Oh,
I think,
okay.
if you're going, and it depends on what your form factor is. With the more CPG classic form factors, whether we're talking gummies and whatnot and beverage, that's something where the consumers kind of built their affinity and they've had a terrible experience when they've stepped out of the product that they know works for them. So you'll see the higher loyalty metrics on those CPG products. When it comes to flour, especially a shopper who's looking for a value flour, maybe more than an eighth, getting a half ounce or a full ounce. Um, they're looking for value. They're looking for, a price point. I
Mhm.
actually went to a presentation by a Headset at Benzinga, and some of the metrics that they had around what form factors really was starting to build loyalty was really interesting.
Is it still the same flower, vapes, edibles?
Well, that's what you see in terms of how the consumers are skewing and where they're spending their money, but
Yeah.
which ones actually have repurchase loyalty from the same consumer. Those numbers tend to be very different. So you'll
Oh.
have a ton of loyalty for the CPG, the edibles and whatnot, and the beverages. You'll have some loyalty at the really premium rosins and flowers. And then it's some pretty interesting things, especially when you get into value flower and value vapes and whatnot. So
Oh, so that was data on repeat customers. Interesting.
exactly.
Oh,
Really trying to drill down on customer loyalty, which is something that I
okay.
don't think, like in most other industries, has really taken root yet in a really true sense. If you walk into a liquor store and you're looking for Johnny Walker, they don't have it. You might get in your car and drive somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
If they don't have what you're looking for, unless we're talking about maybe an edible, at a dispensary, you're gonna find something that does work for you, and you will definitely lean on the bud tender to help you find it.
I have my few brands that I really like.
Oh
Um,
yeah, what are you into?
Okay. Well, I like all different form factors for different times a day. I really try to stay with New York brands. I just want to support these brands. It's been a really tough time here. But
I love that.
I welcome, and I know there's a big thing about only supporting New York brands here. Everybody's like kind of, banding together like New York, but I think everybody does agree you need the, brands coming from the West Coast that are very mature and, have been innovating and, could bring a lot of value into our market. But anyway, so I have to say, with that said, I do like grown gummies. I just like I think I like the texture, the lightness. It's not sugary. It's just rosin based. So I really like that. So they just kind of hit all the mark. I'm sure there's another one I'm going to probably switch to that is a New York brand that has the same, same ingredients. And I've met their farmer and I know and the extractor. So I really know that they really put a lot into it. It's, which really means a lot, especially in this industry with
Yeah,
you just don't know what you're getting. And it's like, I want to know that extractor is really, giving me a good product. I support veterans. That might sway me in a direction. And there is a veteran here. He has New York Honey vapes. And I always see him, honestly, he's always on LinkedIn. Talking about, the quality of his products and his extraction. And you could just tell he's so knowledgeable. For flour, I have a friend a farmer that I like to support, Alchemy Pure. But I don't, oh, and that, there's another brand, Miss Grass. I like to try, I like her. She lives in New York, but she's grew up in New Jersey, but she's like one of the brands like, Mr. Grass. You probably know Miss Grass. She's out in
I
California.
know Kate really well. She's a
Oh yeah,
badass.
Kate.
Love
Yeah, yeah.
Kate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've interviewed her a long time ago, but yeah, she's in the New York scene, so she's always around here. And yeah, so I want to support, things like that. So the New York market is starting to mature in that way. Like that was
Yeah.
very obvious at this last show. Everything, of course, comes out distillate first. Now you saw everybody was doing uh
Starting
raw.
to see some BHO and some live.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
resin and rosin products all over the place. I did notice what dropped off from the last show was everybody at the last show had those drink, those dis was I talking to you about that? The disposable drink, the drink sticks, like like those old drinks,
Oh,
powder
yeah,
drink
yeah.
sticks.
Yeah, so water soluble powders and whatnot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like those old little packs that you just pour into any drink. I thought those were
Shout out TJ at My High. Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. My High. Yes, yes. But all the brands were doing them at the last show. Well, if you were up at Hudson, right? Yeah,
I was.
yes, they all had it out at that show. And that was noticeable from the previous show. But then this show, nobody had them out except the My High guy was there. And then I did ask one dispensary owner and he said they're just not selling. So I was kind of like, wow, I really thought that was going to be, you know.
I think form factors like that in the future probably will be pretty common and a major category. And I think, the one thing we saw early in California is that people were so excited just to be able to get some of their favorite producers and access to the flower itself and some of the extracts themselves that were always kind of hard to find, hard to get through their kind of gray and black channels. And so the excitement around the availability of those things that they've always been familiar with or had sought after, the innovation will come. And I don't know how long
Yeah.
it takes, but it's probably inevitable. And hopefully all those brands could hold on. But the form factor itself is super convenient, right? If you're going on a hike, if
Oh my
you're on a,
God.
you're on a
Yeah.
plane or whatever it is, it's just
Come on, in your pocket. It's just like take it out and pour it in a drink sitting on a plane. Yeah, exactly. No, and another actually brand that I do love in New York is for beverages is Tune. And they're being made by Heirloom or Air, I'm sorry. Um,
Mhm.
but Air is doing well, but their drinks are a little too sweet for me. But they're coming out with a seltzer, actually. I was just talking to them. But Tune is the beverage. I actually buy them in 4 packs. I love the beverages.
I will be in New York in a week and a half, and I'm going to look for some of these. I'm familiar with NY Honey. Soon I'll look
Oh,
for and Alchemy Pure Flower. So
this dispensary Trends that just opened up, and both the founders and they were saying Alchemy Pure is one of their top sellers. He was known for as a gourmet lettuce farmer for 20 years up in the Hudson Valley, servicing like top gourmet restaurants up there. It's all New York City transplants up there. And it's just good restaurants. And that's
what was the name of that one? Was it Blue Hill?
which one? For what?
Uh, the Michelin restaurant that was all
Oh,
locally
I
drawn
don't
up.
know. I
It
don't
was
know.
Blue
But
Hill in
they're up
upstate.
in, yeah, I don't know. But there's a lot of those kind of restaurants up there. But he was the lettuce farmer, and now, so anyway, for 20 years he was doing that. So now they have Alchemy Pure. Oh, another brand that I saw a lot of people around, and this is a husband and wife founders also, is MFNY. You've probably seen them. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great group.
They have people around their table the whole show this past week. They're very passionate. Everything's going to be clean. Everything's going to be great. So a lot of love goes into their product. And one of the things I noticed that they did, and also the Kiva brand that they were doing different from others, is their gummy packages they were promoting them strain based. So it's
Mm.
like peach sherbet or whatever. That was this, which no one's really doing that, but that was a thing I noticed these two guys doing. I thought, that's interesting. I haven't really seen that on gummies. So
Yeah, that's
that's
really cool.
another brand I'm kind of, since that show, since I really met them and talked to them and found out what they're like, I'm going to be trying their products next.
Yeah,
So
it's a great brand. I
yeah.
think that they're kind of drawing in that home team feel for the state, giving somebody, giving the people something to rally around.
Mhm.
They're in every form factor or a few form factors, and they're kind of on the leaderboard in most every one of them. So
Yeah,
doing a
that's
great
right.
job.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, I guess kind of wrapping up, are there, so we were just talking about these different form factors and trends and, like infused pre-rolls with diamonds and things like that. Do you see anything that's popping up now? Like, I know that I feel like there's been all these different versions of pre-rolls. What do you think is really leading, I'm sorry, infused pre-rolls? That seemed to be the one that was really leading the pack in the innovation. And then people were putting diamonds in it or THCA, is there anything like that that's
Yeah, I think you're definitely seeing a wave of. I think the thing that's challenging about pre-rolls and trying to do some of these infusions is the SOP itself. There's a learning curve. Most of those brands guard their SOP, serious IP for them, right? So as people want to knock those off, it's usually pretty easy to tell what the fake is and what's a poor knockoff. I think you're seeing people kind of close that gap a little bit, trying to make a Jeter, trying to make, something like these leading form factors, these leading brands, but getting away from just trying to go after what somebody else has already done and maybe done well. I think that the hash holes, the donuts is something that's getting more and more popular. It had a big 2023. It's having a big
Mm,
2024. I think it's a difficult, uh, spec to nail, but for the people who can do it, it seems
yeah,
like the consumers
that
really
seems,
like it. Yeah, it's got its challenges, but there's more people doing it. Most of the good ones are done by hand.
oh, okay.
But you're seeing a little more automation come there. Not saying that's a good thing, but you are going to see more and more of those on the market. And I think it's a fun smoke.
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot of living soil, and I'm really excited about those projects. I've been to places around the state that are, indoor as well as outdoor, that they have pumpkins and tomatoes and artichokes growing next to. They've got worms crawling in the soil. They've got it all going on there,
Mhm.
and it makes for really incredible flour. So you're seeing people do that with a little more scale because they know the consumer is there. They can also communicate what they're doing differently and some of the benefits of it. So that's exciting. And then you're seeing some of these mixed light projects come on at scale as well that are offering, what would have been right there with some of the best indoor level qualities. Today, they're offering what would have been, pretty comparable to what we expected from indoor at, a really affordable price point. Uh,
Mhm. Okay.
so you're seeing more and more, product come available from those kind of projects.
So I guess the last question is, so I know you just started at this company at Rukli. Do you have like a mission of something you're trying to accomplish in the market? Are you?
Yeah, definitely. I've spent 6, 7 years working with brands, some of them owned or at least worked at by some really close friends. And I've seen these brands struggle. And some of the struggles I felt like were we need more maturity through the supply chain. We need more solid partners at every level, whether it's your distribution partner, whether you are employing salespeople, sales agents, the systems that they're using. Um, I would, I think the goal is to provide a great service, an essential service to these brands so that they can survive, especially the ones that should be surviving and have product market fit. They've got all their product is dialed, their margins are good enough. They need good partners to help, keep them in this marketplace and give them a chance to fight. And yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, you've seen a lot, and I'm sure you could really help brands. Actually, the one question I did want to ask you was, when should a brand, like a new brand coming to the marketplace, when should they consider using a service like Ruckly? Like, is that something you start out of the gate?
As soon as you launch, I mean, what is
Okay.
the alternative, right? The alternative is spending money, brain power, you're going to be getting the CapEx involved with standing it up yourself. Even if you have some of the assets you need, a micro business license would usually make somebody consider it. They already own a truck, might make them want to self-distro. They think Google Sheets could get them through their first 3 to 6 months and whatnot. I would say that you should consider it. You should kick the tires. You should run the analysis, the cost benefits immediately, because I have no problem working with you at your launch. I think that what's best for you as a brand owner is you're focusing on making great products, and maybe you're focusing on marketing those great products. Anything else, I would like to believe, is wasted muscle, especially when there is a good partner sitting here at the right price point that's going to collect for you, that's going to give you transparency. So what is the point, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know if you had a minimum, or if you really like to work with startup brands. And
I want to work with good people and good brands, and I want to make sure that they have the best fighting chance to survive in this marketplace.
Yeah, perfect. Great way to end.